when I decided to make my racist neighbor drama saga a public affair and explain to people that I own a house that I lived in for 10 years until my to-be wife and I bought our new property here. Since I own the other property, it didn't make sense for us to get rid of it, so we rented it out, making me a landlord, which is a title, understandably, some people have some real strong fucking opinions about. And, well, everybody has been completely, like, overwhelmingly supportive about everything. There has been a few comments, which I expected, like this, and this person was at least, you know, nice and respectful. There was some that or less so. But with the frustrations of the housing market and the cost of housing and everything like that, I think this is something that deserves a conversation. Because landlords themselves aren't inherently good or bad. And saying that landlords steal from their tenants, well, that can be true as a blanket statement is utter bullshit. It's like saying dealerships are stealing from you because you decided to lease a car. Now, before everybody jumps down my goddamn throat, just hear me the fuck out. First off, there's plenty of people who wish they could buy a house who are paying more for rent than they would on a mortgage. And for these people, late-stage capitalism has put up insurmountable obstacles between them and home ownership, which is a huge fucking problem. But some people still choose to rent or need to rent for a number of reasons. Some people don't want the headaches of home ownership maintenance because let me tell you, it's a fucking nightmare. Some people move a lot and it's not practical for them to buy a house in one particular area. Some people don't have the credit or the savings to secure a mortgage. The list goes on and on. Now, even if we did manage to rectify the catastrophic state of our housing insecurity and affordability problems here in the United States, unless we completely nationalize housing, long-term rentals will remain a completely necessary and beneficial part of housing solutions. Moving on, the pain and despair that people feel because they've been priced out of or red taped out of home ownership is very real and very fucking valid. And on things like this, because it affects people, you know, personally and emotionally, really negatively impacts their own lives or the lives of the people that they love and care about, people tend to lash out and have more generalized emotional responses to these problems. Like this comment, landlords are stealing, I should sell my property. Which in this case is unwittingly advocating for me kicking out my minority tenants and selling my property to likely an upper middle class white family. Because my tenant has been good with his money, paid for everything with cash his whole life, has never taken out loans, which means he has no credit history, which means banks won't give him a fucking mortgage. I get it too. There's contracts for deeds and there's other options which have their own implications, and I could do a whole fucking video on that, but that's not the point. The point is that the boogeyman isn't landlords. The boogeyman is the financial institutions and corporate ownership of single family homes. 25%, a quarter of our nation's single family homes are owned by investment firms. There is over 15 million homes in the United States that are vacant, that are not on the market right now. Corporations are hoarding houses to drive up property values and drive up rent and make sure that people don't have any other options except to rent from properties that, well, they already own. And this problem is, you know, sadly kind of Obama's fault, at least in part, because when banks started foreclosing on massive numbers of houses during the Great Recession of '09, financial policies very similar to during the Great Depression were put into place to help people refinance and restructure and keep their homes. And it worked great during the Great Depression. However, the difference this time was a lack of regulation, and well, the policies were there, banks didn't have to utilize them, and they didn't have to work with people. So they didn't. The banks foreclosed on massive amounts of houses, and now they're sitting on all of this stuff, and it's costing them money in taxes and maintenance, and people are stealing copper pipes out of shit because nobody can afford to eat and live. It's at this point that there should have been another regulation guardrail that just wasn't there. See, the banks should have been required at this point to sell all the houses that they foreclosed on individually back to individuals. In this case, some people should have been able to, like they did during the Great Depression, get foreclosed on, lose their house, and then buy it back from the bank for cheaper than what they owed originally. That's a lot of fucking work, right? And banks were obviously having financial problems, which is a whole other topic. So they would auction off these foreclosed homes in pools of 10, 20, 30, 40 plus houses. And the only people who can buy dozens of fucking houses at a time are wealthy people and big corporations that have the capital sitting around to drop millions and millions of dollars on a bunch of fucking houses. And that's what they did, because for them it was a great fucking deal. They got houses for pennies on the dollar. Now you have a bunch of people who've lost their homes who need housing, so guess what? You get to rent their houses back to them. Now, not only are they making a profit on the property because they're getting paid rent for it, it's assets that started massively increasing in value because they paid bargain basement prices. And then the rise of the short-term rental market came around, and you had like Airbnb and VRBO, or Verbo, fucking stupid, which was way more profitable than long-term rentals. So all these big corporations just kept buying and investing in single-family homes. Then interest rates would just drop down to next to nothing so they could just afford to let them sit there empty, or they'd leave them as short-term rentals. So now all this housing's off the market, the supply for housing is limited, and that drives up both rental prices and property prices. You couple all that with banks requiring higher down payments and larger income to debt ratios to get a mortgage, and contractors motivated to build bigger, more expensive homes because the market's there and the profit margins are bigger. And that's why we have the fucking problem with housing we have today. Now, I get it. A lot of landlords are total douchebags, especially if your landlord is some investment company or big corporate conglomerate. They are absolutely exploiting you for every last dime they can. But the problem is not that they are landlords. The problem is that they are corporations that own a quarter of all single family fucking housing. And if we want to fix this problem, bitching about individual landlords isn't gonna fucking do it. Should there be more regulations in place like rent control and better tenant protection? Absolutely. But the solution is barring fucking corporate ownership of single family homes. Because like every other fucking problem in this country, this is a class war problem. Class-wise, my tenants and I and 90% of the country are the fucking same. And it's us, all of us, against our fucking oligarch overlords. So when it comes to this topic, we need to stop worrying about grandma's snowbird home, your uncle's cabin on the lake, or my rental property, and start focusing on opening up a can of Teddy fucking Roosevelt and busting up these monopolies that are exploiting the shelter that we need to survive for fucking profit. It's the proletariat against the powerful. It is, always has been, and always will be. So pick your enemies wisely.